r/NoSleep. The Landlord's Journal, a survival guide for Flat 34. Moving in with Lucas was supposed to be the start of everything. We'd been together for 6 years, surviving long nights as med students and shuffling between temp jobs to keep the bills paid. I just turned 25, and Lucas was 26. It felt like we'd finally earned this, a place of our own. When we found Flat 34, perched in an old Victorian building at the corner of Breckmore Avenue, it felt like fate. 2 bedrooms, a study nook, a living room with bay windows that caught the sun at just the right angle. It was more than we'd dreamed. The rent was shockingly low, almost half of what we'd budgeted. No deposit, no intrusive landlord inspections, just an old, silver-haired agent who handed us the keys with a fleeting smile. His fingers had trembled as he wished us good luck. I chalked it up to his age. Moving day was a frenzy of lifting, organizing, and laughter. We crammed our belongings into the narrow, creaking lift and trudged up 4 stories. Flat 34 was ours, ready for first night takeout, soft music, and a mattress on the floor. I felt giddy, light. Lucas wrapped his arm around me, whispering, "Here's to us." We clinked our plastic glasses, oblivious. Morning came with a soft patter of rain. Lucas had already left for his first shift at the clinic. I brewed coffee, exploring our kitchen with its chipped tiles and yellowing cupboards. In the farthest one, hidden behind an ancient bag of flour, I found a journal bound in cracked, brown leather. It was thin and smelled of mildew. On the first page, in rushed, uneven handwriting, was a message, to the next tenants of Flat 34. My stomach tightened as I read the words scrawled beneath. To the new tenants of Flat 34. Welcome. I am writing this not out of malice or mischief, but out of a desperate hope that you will listen and learn. I lived here for 22 years, and there are things you must understand if you wish to stay longer than a few months. Never look directly into the hallway mirror after midnight. It reflects more than your image. If you catch something else staring back, do not acknowledge it. Pretend you did not see it, turn your back, and go to bed. Failure to do so invites a visit you will not survive. Keep all windows locked between dusk and dawn. This is not a safety precaution, it is essential. I learned this too late. There is a woman, her face sallow, eyes sunken, who taps on the glass. She will smile, soft and pleading, but do not let her in. She only smiles when she's hungry. You will hear footsteps in the hallway after 2:15 a.m. They are heavy, deliberate, pacing from the stairs to your door and back again. Do not approach the door. Do not call out. Lucas made that mistake, and I will never forget the way the sound changed, from pacing to a slow, insistent scratching at the door. Never trust the music. Sometimes, you'll hear an old lullaby faintly playing in the living room. It will grow louder if you search for the source, and then it will stop, replaced by whispers that fill the room. Leave immediately. Stay at a friend's until morning. Once, I ignored this rule, and for 3 nights, I found red handprints on my walls, trailing from the ceiling to my bed. The basement should never be entered. There is a reason it is padlocked. In my early years here, I dared to go down when I found the lock broken. I saw things, matted hair, a handprint smeared in something too dark to be rust. The basement was bolted shut the next day, and the key vanished from sight. Keep the journal safe. You may not understand its importance now, but you will. In moments of uncertainty, it will guide you. Do not, under any circumstance, discard it. I leave this behind as a final gesture, not to frighten but to forewarn. There are reasons the rent is low, reasons I stayed despite the horrors. Listen well, follow these rules, and you may find a way to live here with minimal interference. With caution and resolve. Eliza Hawthorne. I read and reread the pages, each word etching dread deeper into my chest. Rain pelted the windows, and a shiver slithered down my spine as a soft creak echoed from the hallway. I stood frozen, the journal gripped in my trembling hands. The hallway mirror, with its tarnished frame and spidering cracks, stood just beyond my line of sight. It's just an old story, I whispered to myself, willing the fear to ebb away. But the tiny hairs on my neck refused to settle. The day dragged on. I unpacked, glanced nervously at the mirror, avoided the windows as dusk fell. By the time Lucas returned, I was half convinced the journal was some twisted joke. I showed it to him, my fingers still shaking. He laughed it off, kissed my forehead, and promised we'd sleep with the windows locked, just in case. We settled in, drifting to sleep as the world outside went quiet. Hours later, a sharp tap 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 at the window snapped me awake. My breath caught as I turned to see a woman's pale face pressed against the glass, eyes hollow, lips pulled into a too wide smile. She mouthed words I couldn't hear, and my blood turned to ice. Lucas stirred, mumbling in his sleep. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. I squeezed my eyes shut, heart hammering, repeating Eliza's words like a prayer, "Keep the windows locked. Do not let her in." Minutes passed like hours. The tapping slowed, then stopped. I dared to look again. She was gone. Lucas woke to my sobs and cradled me, confusion turning to fear as he saw the smeared red handprints trailing down the window. I didn't have to say a word. The journal lay open beside us, a silent witness, as we realized that the rules were not a warning. They were our only chance of survival. The next few days passed in a blur of hushed whispers and stolen glances at the journal, as if it might spring to life and scream at us. Lucas tried to keep our spirits up, insisting we were just exhausted from the move and the stress of starting new jobs. But I knew he was shaken. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes, and his hand would linger on mine a little too long, as though silently asking for reassurance. The sounds began the following night. It was 2:13 a.m. when I jolted awake to the unmistakable creak of footsteps in the hallway. I squeezed Lucas's arm, heart pounding as we listened. The pacing was slow, deliberate, an intruder inspecting their claim. Step by step, it drew closer until it reached our door. A shadow shifted under the crack at the base of the door, and then it paused. The silence was a thunderous roar in my ears. I gripped Lucas's hand so hard it hurt, my breath caught in my throat. A slow, scraping sound followed. Fingernails? Claws? The scratching was measured, almost methodical, running from the floor to the doorknob, where it hesitated, tapping 3 times. Each tap sent a bolt of terror down my spine. Lucas's face was pale in the dark, eyes wide and searching mine for answers I didn't have. "Don't move," I mouthed, my voice lost to the choking dread. He nodded, eyes darting to the hallway mirror, which sat angled so it could catch the faint glow of the streetlight. It stood motionless, empty. For now. The scratching resumed and didn't stop until the first hints of dawn bled into the sky, soft and rose-colored, washing away the night's shadows. When it was over, we lay in silence, muscles tense, too afraid to trust the newfound peace. At 7, when the sun's rays bathed the flat, Lucas finally spoke, voice hoarse. "We need to leave." I nodded, barely hearing him as I stared at the mirror, which now seemed to loom larger, its frame darker, more malevolent. The journal's words replayed in my mind, "Never look directly into the hallway mirror after midnight." I had the sickening feeling that whatever had been on the other side had been watching us all along. Day 5, the lullaby. We began to make plans to move, calling in favors and scrambling for listings we could afford. But each attempt met a strange resistance. Potential landlords never answered their phones. Listings disappeared overnight. It was as if Flat 34 had an invisible tether binding us to its haunted confines. That night, exhaustion dragged me into an uneasy sleep. I woke to the sound of music, an old lullaby playing faintly from the living room. My heart leapt into my throat as the melody grew clearer, achingly sweet but edged with something cold and sinister. The journal's warning flashed in my mind, "Never trust the music." I scrambled to shake Lucas awake, but he was already stirring, eyes wide with fear. The music swelled, then cut out abruptly, leaving a silence so thick it pressed against my ears. Whispering followed, like dozens of voices overlapping, and then a soft thud. Something had moved. "Don't go," I pleaded as Lucas stood, his expression torn between terror and the stubborn need to protect. He paused, one foot on the floor, listening. The whispers returned, louder, closer, seeping through the walls. I reached for the journal, clutching it to my chest as if it could ward off the dark. "Out," he said, barely more than a breath. "We need to get out." We made it halfway across the living room when the bay windows rattled, a sudden gust pushing against them. For a moment, I thought I saw the outline of a woman's face, eyes empty, lips curled into that grotesque smile. Lucas yanked me back, his body shielding mine as the whispers dissolved into a cacophony of harsh, ragged breaths. We bolted for the hallway, the journal slipping from my grasp and landing with a soft thud by the mirror. Day 7, the basement. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by the constant vigilance that comes with knowing something watches, waits. The footsteps, the tapping, the whispers, all had grown more insistent, as if testing our will. The journal's entries became our script for survival, its warnings our only weapons. On the 7th night, we heard it, the basement door groaning open, despite the heavy padlock we'd inspected countless times. Lucas's face was a mask of dread as the sound echoed through the flat. I held my breath, counting the seconds until silence returned. But silence didn't come. A wet, dragging noise followed, and with it, a low, guttural growl that settled deep in my bones. "We have to see," Lucas whispered, and I shook my head violently. "No," Eliza said. "If it's out of the basement, it's in here with us," he argued, grabbing the flashlight. My protest died in my throat as he crept into the hallway, the beam of light slicing through the dark. I followed, unable to bear being alone. The basement door was ajar, revealing a darkness that seemed to breathe. A sudden crash behind us made me scream. The mirror, it had cracked, fractures spreading out like veins. In its reflection, I saw movement, a shadow standing behind Lucas, tall and impossibly thin, its limbs bent at unnatural angles. Its face was wrong, blurred as if obscured by a veil of water. And it was smiling. "Lucas!" I shrieked, yanking him back as the mirror splintered further, a high-pitched wail escaping its surface. We stumbled into the living room, panting, eyes wild. Day 8, the final warning. By morning, we knew we couldn't stay another night. The journal now sat in the center of the room, open to a page that hadn't been there before. A new entry, in the same frantic hand. "If you wish to live, leave tonight. Do not look back. The mirror holds them, but only until the last crack. Eliza." We packed what we could carry and fled as soon as the sun dipped behind the skyline. The air in flat 34 seemed to hum, alive with whispers that followed us to the door. Lucas glanced once at the hallway mirror, and his eyes widened, mouth parting in shock. He wouldn't tell me what he saw. We didn't stop until we reached the safety of a friend's house across the city. The journal came with us, a grim reminder of the things we'd endured. The following morning, we called the agent to report our immediate departure, only to be met with a long silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, resigned. "You made it out," he said, more a statement than a question. "Many don't." Flat 34 remains empty now, its bay windows catching the morning light, hiding the secrets within. We never learned why the rent was so low or who, or what, Eliza Hawthorne really was. But as we pieced our lives back together, the journal sat locked away in a drawer, its pages closed but not forgotten. We never spoke of what we'd seen or heard. Some nightmares are better left in silence. But sometimes, in the dark, I can still hear the tapping, soft, deliberate, waiting.